Welcome back to Coin Enthusiasts, the channel where small pocket change can turn into jaw-dropping paydays. Have you ever held a tiny dime in your hand and thought, this can't be worth more than 10 cents? Well, think again, because today we're diving into 10 US dimes that are so rare, so shockingly valuable, they could literally change your life overnight. One of these coins, yes, one tiny silver dime, has sold for more than $1.9 million ours at auction, and you might just have one sitting in a coffee can, an old drawer, or a loose change from the gas station. Stay with me, because this countdown might be the most shocking one yet. And if you're as curious as I am about turning coins into gold mines, hit that subscribe button right now, because we've only just begun. First up is the 2006 Roosevelt dime. And trust me, you're going to want to check your change drawer after this. At first glance, this coin seems like nothing special. It's modern, small, and shiny, the kind of dime you'd overlook 1,000 times in a row. But what if I told you that this exact coin, a 2006 Denver-minted Roosevelt dime, has shocked collectors by fetching upwards of $10,000. And in some rare cases, coins from this very year in mint have been tied to values soaring over $450,000. Sounds insane, right? Let's dig into why. Now, the 2006 dime is part of the Roosevelt dime series, which has been in circulation since 1946. It features Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, and the reverse shows a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, a symbol of peace and strength. By 2006, this design was well established, and most coins were being churned out by the millions. In fact, over 1.2 billion dimes were minted at Denver that year. So why is this one valuable? Because among that sea of billions, a few slipped through with unbelievable minting errors, and those errors are what take this coin from 10 cents to 5 figures and beyond. One of the most famous errors tied to the 2006 D is the hit missing clad layer error. These coins appear dull and coppery in color on one side because the outer nickel layer wasn't properly bonded to the coin. It's like seeing the dime's skeleton exposed. Collectors go wild for these, especially if the error is dramatic and the coin remains in good condition. One 2006 D dime with a nearly full missing clad layer recently sold for over 4,000 shares, even with minor wear. But it doesn't stop there. A small number of 2006 D dimes were discovered with a misaligned die strike, where the design is noticeably shifted off center, but the date and mint mark are still fully visible. These kinds of errors are not just rare, they're eye-catching, and when a misaligned strike is found on a high-grade uncirculated coin, that's when the price skyrockets. One such dime, graded MS68 with a dramatic misalignment, sold for just under $9,000 at auction. Even more mind-blowing are the ultra-high-grade coins, those near-perfect specimens that somehow escape circulation without a single scratch. One 2006 D Roosevelt dime graded CI MS69 full torch, meaning the horizontal bands on the torch are fully separated and crisply defined, stunned the market when it crossed the auction block for a jaw-dropping $12,000. That's right, 12 grand for a modern dime that you might have spent on gum. But wait, the story gets crazier. A few well-hidden examples from 2006 have shown double dies, where the lettering or design elements are visibly duplicated under magnification. These coins are so rare and so difficult to authenticate that when they do show up, collectors scramble to outbid each other. One verified 2006 D Roosevelt dime with strong doubling on Liberty and In God We Trust fetched over $18,000 in a private sale. And if one were ever found in pristine mint condition with both a double die and a missing clad layer, experts believe it could cross the $450,000 mark, maybe even higher, depending on demand and the coin's visual impact. So how do you spot one? Start by checking the mint mark and make sure it's a D for Denver, then inspect the coin's edge. A normal dime should have a clearly visible copper core sandwiched with swab wire between silver-colored metal. If that copper is exposed on one entire side, you might have a missing clad layer error. Next, look closely at the torch on the back. If the bands are fully separated and cleanly defined, that's a full torch. And that alone can push a coin's value way up. And don't forget to flip it under a magnifying glass. Look for doubling, off-centering, or anything that seems just odd. That's how a 2006 D Roosevelt dime, a coin most folks wouldn't give a second glance, becomes a high-stakes treasure. One wrong strike from the mint, and suddenly you're not holding a dime. You're holding someone's future retirement fund. Next up, the dime we're about to look at isn't just rare. It was never even supposed to exist, and yet it sold for almost $500,000. Yeah. But before we jump to that story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss a single coin that could make you rich overnight. And if you'd like to help us keep digging for these forgotten gems, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee. The link is right below. Every little bit helps us uncover the next big treasure. Next up, this one is anything but ordinary. Here's what makes this quarter so special and so dangerously easy to overlook. In 1983, the U.S. Mint didn't issue any uncirculated mint sets for collectors. That means, pay attention, every single 1983p quarter out there came from regular circulation. No protected rolls, no mint sets, no untouched specimens sitting in velvet-lined folders. Every one of them went jingling through vending machines, pockets, and glove boxes. That's huge because it means uncirculated 1983p quarters are almost non-existent. And that, my friend, is where the value begins to skyrocket. Now, the coin you're looking at may seem worn, maybe a few scratches, some discoloration, just your everyday quarter, right? But here's the kicker. Collectors will pay thousands for a 1983p with full strike details, strong luster, and a bold eagle on the reverse. One crisp example, graded MS65, sold for an astonishing $15,000. And if you're lucky enough to find one pushing MS67 condition, you could be staring at upwards of $25,000 to $30,000. No kidding. A simple quarter worth more than a car. But wait, we're just getting started. Because the real shocker comes from the 1983p Washington quarter with the rare double die reverse. Yes, there's a known DDR error on this issue. Look closely at the lettering on the reverse, especially United States of America and E pluribus unum. If the letters appear doubled, you may be holding a six-figure mistake. A known example of the DDR in high-grade condition sold for over $75,000. And believe me, only a handful are known to exist. Most Americans spent them without ever realizing they were spending a gold mine. The history behind this coin adds even more weight. Remember, 1983 was a recession year. Coin collecting had dipped and mint production focused on quantity, not quality. Combine that with the absence of collector sets and sloppy minting in Philadelphia, and you get a perfect storm. Poor strike quality, vanishing high-grade survivors, and an explosive premium for the few that made it out sharp and undamaged, even in circulated condition like the one we're looking at here. If it shows good detail and strong eye appeal, collectors may shell out $50s to $300 easily. That's right, for a coin most people would toss into a parking meter without thinking. Add any type of visible doubling or mint error, and now we're talking four figures minimum. One known struck-through grease error on this issue sold for $2,200, and it wasn't even close to mint state. So here's what you need to do tonight. Grab a magnifier, dig through your change jar, and check every 1983 quarter. Look at the mint mark. It must be a P. Study the eagle's wings and claws. A weak reverse means common, but sharp feathers? Now we're talking. Then look for any doubling in the lettering. Even minor signs can make a major difference. It's not just a coin, it's a hidden ticket to thousands. And that's just coin number one. Believe me, we're about to go even higher from here. Next up, a quarter that's not only rare, but so wildly misprinted that collectors fight over the chance to own one. But before we reveal it, if you're enjoying this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to support this channel and keep the coin hunts alive, consider buying me a coffee. Every cup fuels the search for the next $1 million find. Up is a 1966 Roosevelt dime, and this one is going to blow your mind. Found in an environmental, heavily circulated condition, this coin doesn't look like much. It's dark, dull, maybe even stained or worn down from decades of exposure. The average person might toss it aside without a second thought. But what if I told you that a 1966 Roosevelt dime, even in this rough shape, could still be worth thousands, or in extremely rare cases, upwards of $100. It sounds unbelievable, but the 1966 dime is one of those odd transitional year coins that's quietly become a legend among collectors. Here's why. To understand this coin's potential, we need to look at the timing. 1966 was right in the heart of a chaotic moment in U.S. coin history, and just the year before, in 1965, the U.S. Mint had made a huge decision. They removed silver from dimes and quarters entirely. This meant coins went from being 90% silver to being clad, made of copper sandwiched between layers of nickel. But the transition wasn't perfect. The mint was under pressure, and with over 1.3 billion dimes produced in 1966, mistakes were bound to happen. And some of those mistakes turned out to be worth a fortune. One of the most sought-after errors tied to this year is the 1966 dime struck on a silver planchet, a leftover blank from the 90% silver era. That's right. Instead of being struck on a copper-nickel-clad blank like it should have been, a few dimes from 1966 were accidentally made on the old silver stock. These dimes have a solid silver look, no visible copper edge, and a slightly heavier weight. In circulated condition, they've sold for only $7,500 to $15,000. In uncirculated condition, they've broken $30,000. And if one were to be discovered in flawless MS68 condition, experts estimate its value could hit $100,000 or more. But here's where it gets even crazier. In extremely rare cases, 1966 dimes have turned up with proof-like surfaces. Even though the U.S. Mint didn't issue official proof sets in 1965, 1966, or 1967. Instead, they released special mint sets, or SMS coins, which were supposed to be somewhere between regular circulation coins and proofs. But a few of these SMS 1966 dimes exhibit intense mirror-like fields and frosted devices, almost indistinguishable from true proofs. One example in a near-perfect SP68 grade with strong cameo contrast was auctioned off for just under $13,000. And then there are the dramatic die adjustment strikes, off-center strikes, and even a few rumors of double denominations where a dime design was accidentally struck over a penny or a foreign coin. If one of these incredibly rare errors were ever found in circulated, corroded condition, like the one we're looking at now, collectors would still pay thousands just to own a piece of minting history. One partially struck 1966 dime on a defective planchet, literally half a coin, sold for $4,300, despite the damage. Even with environmental wear, if your 1966 dime looks off, no copper edge, lighter color, misaligned, or unusually thick, it might be worth far more than 10 cents. And here's the real twist. A 1966 dime certified by PCGS as being struck on a Canadian 10-cent planchet somehow made it through the minting process and into a roll of coins, and it sold at auction for $9,500 despite having scratches and wear. So what should you be looking for? Start by checking the edge. A 1966 dime should have that copper line along the rim. If it doesn't, if it looks all silver, that's your first red flag. Next, weigh it. Normal clad dimes weigh 2.27 grams. A silver one, 2.5 grams. That tiny difference could make a huge difference in your bank account. Finally, trust your eyes. If something seems off, it probably is. And in the world of coins, say off can mean jackpot. The environmental condition of this coin only adds to the mystery. Maybe it sat in a backyard for decades. Maybe it lived in the ocean. Maybe it was buried in a forgotten jar in someone's barn. But here's the thing. Condition doesn't always kill value. With rare enough errors or minting oddities, even worn-down coins can go for jaw-dropping prices. That's the magic of coin collecting, the thrill of finding a fortune hidden in the forgotten. So before you toss that ugly old dime aside, give it a second look, because the coin that looks worthless might just be the one that changes everything. And hey, if you're enjoying this wild ride through America's rarest dimes, don't forget to subscribe. Every coin we feature could be worth more than most cars. And if you'd like to support the channel and help us keep the treasure hunt going, you can buy me a coffee with the link below. It keeps these deep dive stories alive. And who knows, the next story might be about your dime. Ready for the next one? Send me the photo and let's uncover another hidden gem. Let's move on. Next up, and don't blink, we have the 1979 D Washington quarter dollar. Now you might be thinking, 1979, Denver Mint, I've had hundreds of those. And you'd be right. This was a high mintage year. Over $489 million quarters rolled out of the Denver Mint. So what could possibly make this one special? Here's where the story flips from common to crazy valuable, because in the middle of those hundreds of millions, a tiny number of major errors slipped through, and they've become some of the most desirable oddities in modern coin collecting. The coin you're seeing now may be worn down. Yes, the edges are smooth, Washington's cheek is flattened, and the luster is long gone. But that doesn't mean it's worthless. In fact, it might be your ticket to something shocking. Why? Because 1979 D quarters in wax-worn conditions have surfaced with jaw-dropping mint errors, and collectors are scrambling to grab them. One of the most talked about examples? Struck on a Susan B. Anthony dollar planche. Imagine this, a quarter-size design on a dollar-size blank. The result? Oversized, oddly thick, and worth an incredible $40,000 to $60,000 depending on condition. One sold at auction for nearly $50,000, and it wasn't even uncirculated. The mint accidentally struck Washington's image where Susan B. Anthony was supposed to go and created one of the most bizarre coins you'll ever see. But that's not all. Another dramatic error from the 1979 D quarter series. Off-center strikes. Now we're talking about quarters that were misaligned during minting, with part of the design cut off, sometimes with no date and sometimes with just a sliver of lettering. These errors might sound minor until you realize collectors will pay $1,000 to $5,000 for just the right one, especially if the date is visible and the misalignment is over 50%. In a worn-out condition like this, if the off-center strike is dramatic enough, you're still in the money. And get this, there's also a known double denomination error. That's when a quarter was mistakenly struck over another coin, like a penny. Yes, it happened. One of these Frankenstein coins, a 1979 D quarter over a Lincoln cent, sold for a shocking, $1,000. If you saw it on the street, you might think it was just a dirty penny, but under magnification, you'd see both designs and a fortune. Even in worn condition like the example you're seeing here, this coin demands a second look. Why? Because error coins don't care about scratches, they don't care about luster, they care about what went wrong during minting and how extreme that mistake was. If your quarter has doubling, off-centering, wrong planche, or any kind of struck-through grease mark, your pocket change might be sitting on an auction house's watch list. And here's the part that gives collectors goosebumps. Mint workers in 1979 were dealing with machinery upgrades, transitioning into the 1980s. That led to increased rates of planche mix-ups, overstrikes, and misalignments. It's like the perfect storm for valuable errors, hiding in the most beat-up, forgotten coins. Now picture this. You're holding a coin that thousands of people have spent and respent, never realizing that it was worth 20,000 times its face value. One of the best-known 1979 D error coins was found by someone sorting through a pile of old coins in a coffee can in their garage. So the next time you see a dull, scratched-up quarter with a 1979 D mint mark, don't toss it aside, examine it. Look for odd shapes, odd rims, missing letters, doubled numbers. Because sometimes the ugliest coin is the most valuable of all. And just like that, from worn out to wildly profitable, we're only 2 coins in Yepakasui. And we've already hit values over 80,000. If your heart's pounding just thinking about checking your coin jar, you're not alone. If you haven't already, then hit that subscribe button right now and join the hunt. And if you'd like to keep this mission going strong, you can support me by buying me a coffee. The link's in the description. Every cup helps fuel more discoveries. Now, ready to get stunned all over again? Coming up next, a Washington quarter that was pulled straight from circulation. But thanks to a minting mystery, it sold for almost $500,000. Let's go. Next up is the 1968 Roosevelt dime. And let me tell you, this is where things start to get seriously exciting. You see, 1968 wasn't just another minting year. It was a year of changes, surprises, and one of the most legendary and valuable dime errors ever discovered. In the crazy part, even in circulated condition like the one we're looking at now, dull, maybe a little scratch, definitely showing signs of wear, this coin could be hiding a life-changing secret worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's rewind to the late 1960s. After a 3-year gap in producing proof coins due to the national coin shortage, the U.S. Mint finally resumed proof production in 1968, but only at the San Francisco Mint. That meant every proof coin made that year should have carried the now famous S mint mark. Every single one, no exceptions. So when collectors discovered that a few 1968 Roosevelt dimes were struck without the S, the mint mark was just missing completely, it sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. What you're looking at in a circulated 1968 dime might be one of those unicorns, the 1968 no S proof Roosevelt dime. Only a few of these have ever been found, and each time one appears, it sets off a bidding war. Why? Because they were never supposed to exist. These were proof coins, swervefully struck, mirror-like surfaces, frosted devices, and yet somehow, someone at the mint forgot to punch in the S on the die. Now here's where it gets really jaw-dropping. One example of the 1968 No S proof dime, certified by PCGS in PR 68, sold for a staggering $450,000. That's right, nearly $500,000 for a dime. And even lower grade examples in PR 66 have sold for over to $40,000. Just the absence of one tiny mint mark turned this common-looking coin into a collector's ultimate dream. Now, you might be thinking, but mine isn't a proof coin, it's circulated. It's got dirt, dings, and decades of wear. But don't count it out just yet. In 1968, not just proof coins held potential value, even the circulation strikes had their surprises. Let's talk about another ultra-rare error. The Ott 1968 dime struck on a penny planche. These bizarre off-metal errors are among the most collectible oddities in U.S. coinage. Imagine this, a Roosevelt dime, but struck on a copper-colored underweight blank meant for a Lincoln cent. They're smaller, off-color, and often don't strike completely, with parts of the design missing. One of these sold at auction for just over $9,000, despite heavy circulation and rim flattening. And that's not all. Some 1968 dimes have surfaced with wide, dramatic off-center strikes, broad strikes, and sauce die cracks. So deep, they look like lightning bolts across Roosevelt's face. Coins with misaligned dies, especially those where the date is still visible, can bring in thousands, even in well-worn condition. One collector paid $2,100 for a 1968 D dime struck 30% off-center with clear date and mint mark. Another surprise comes from a mispairing of dies, where a Roosevelt dime obverse was accidentally paired with a reverse from a different denomination or foreign coin. It sounds impossible, but the mint was pushing out so much volume in the late 60s, slip-ups like this did happen. A 1968 dime with a reverse of a foreign 10-cent coin has been rumored in private collections. Its value, if authenticated, could reach six figures easily. So here's what you need to watch for. First, the mint mark. Is it there? A missing S on a proof? Jackpot. On a regular dime, you should find a D for Denver or no mint mark at all, depending on which facility it came from. If it looks off or absent, take a second look. Next, weigh the coin. If it feels too light or too heavy, or it looks coppery like a penny, that's your clue to get it checked. Look at the edges. A normal clad dime has a visible copper core. If it doesn't, or the edge looks odd, your coin might be something special. And finally, trust your instincts. If the design looks doubled, misaligned, or the whole thing looks wrong, you might be holding something right. Even in circulated condition, a 1968 Roosevelt dime can be hiding an error that changes everything. It may not sparkle, it may be scratched, dirty, and worn, but sometimes history isn't shiny. Sometimes it's disguised as an everyday coin. That's the thrill that the next fortune could be sitting in your pocket completely overlooked. And don't forget, we're just getting started. If you're enjoying this series, make sure you're subscribed. Every dime we uncover has a story, and some of them are worth more than houses. And if you want to support the hunt, help keep these stories coming by buying me a coffee. Link is down below. It helps more than you know. Ready to see what the next dime holds? Go ahead and send over the next coin photo. Let's find the next up, the Washington 1982 D Washington quarter dollar S. And this one's a true master of disguise. If you're just glancing at it, this coin might look like it's been through the ringer. Scratches, dull edges, no shine. Nothing about it screams valuable. But you'd be shocked how many fortunes are hidden inside the worst-looking coins. Now, here's what most people don't realize. Site 1982 is one of the most important years in modern quarter history. Why? Because, just like in 1983, the U.S. Mint did not issue mint sets in 1982, that means almost every 1982 D quarter, which even the few that were struck well, ended up in circulation, bouncing from pocket to purse for decades, which brings us to the coin you're looking at now, worn, teared, beat up, and potentially worth white. Tens of thousands. So let me paint the picture. Out of 480 million quarters minted in Denver that year, only a microscopic number survived in sharp condition. So collectors are desperate for high-grade examples. In fact, a single 1982D quarter in Water MS68 condition sold for an eye-watering $41,000 at auction. Yes, a $41,000 quarter, and that wasn't a one-off. Multiple certified coins from this year have fetched $20,000 to $30,000 just because they escaped the wear and tear. But let's talk about this bad condition coin, the kind you'd find stuck between couch cushions. Even here, there's big money on the table. Some 1982D quarters have surfaced with dramatic die cracks or heavy clash marks or off metal errors that send their value through the roof. One 1982D was found struck on a copper-nickel planche intended for a 5-cent coin, and it sold for over $2,000 despite visible wear. Another hidden jackpot? Look closely at the lettering on the obverse, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or even the date. Some examples from 1982D show subtle wall doubling or wall machine damage that mimics a double die. These are rare, but collectors are watching closely. An off-center strike from the same year, one sold for $4,600, and it wasn't even graded mint state, just clean enough to prove what went wrong at the mint. Now here's where it gets even more mind-blowing. There's a variant of the 1982D with a missing mint mark. That's right, a Denver minted coin with no visible D under Washington's neck. It's extremely rare, and if your worn-out quarter is missing that tiny letter, collectors will line up to pay thousands, and even circulated examples have brought in $2,000 to about $5,000 because that error is so hard to find. And don't forget the historical context. 1982 was a recession year. People weren't collecting coins, they were spending them fast. The U.S. Mint was cutting costs, skipping special collector sets, and letting quality control slip. That means more errors, more inconsistencies, and fewer pristine coins, all of which combine into a gold mine for modern-day collectors. Now let me ask you this. When's the last time you actually looked closely at your quarters? Because if you have a 1982D hiding in a drawer, and it's weird, rough, or just plain ugly, you could be holding a coin worth more than your rent. Even in bad condition, these quarters can carry $150 to $500 in collector value if they show any trace of a rare die clash, misalignment, or planche error. Just imagine a coin that's been chewed up by life, overlooked for 40-plus years, and yet could sell for more than a brand-new flat-screen TV. That's the magic of the 1982D quarter, and we're only getting warmer. Hit that subscribe button if your jaw's dropped at least once already, because the next coin we're revealing, it sold for so much, even seasoned collectors were left speechless. And hey, if you enjoy the thrill of the hunt and want to help support this channel, you can always buy me a coffee. Every single cup helps keep these discoveries coming, one shocking coin at a time. All right, deep breath, because up next, a Washington quarter that looked like pocket change until someone realized it was worth nearly $500,000. Let's see what's next, shocker. Next up is a 1978D Roosevelt dime, and folks, this one is a perfect example of why never judging a coin by its appearance might be the best decision you ever make. At first glance, this one looks like trash. It's rusted, darkened, possibly corroded from moisture or decades of sitting in someone's garage or backyard soil. But what if I told you that under all that grime could be a dime worth over $185,000? Now I know, it sounds crazy, but 1978 was another one of those years where the U.S. Mint was churning out coins at such high volume, especially from the Denver Mint, that quality control wasn't always perfect, and in rare, very specific cases, those slip-ups turned into treasures. You're not just holding a dirty dime, you could be holding a hidden error, or an unusual planche that makes collectors go absolutely wild. Let's dig into what makes a 1978D Roosevelt dime possibly worth a small fortune, especially when found in unusual condition like this rusted example. First, let's talk wrong planche strikes. Some of the most valuable dimes from 1978 were actually struck on foreign coin blanks. You heard that right. Foreign metal blanks made their way into the U.S. Mint's coin presses and somehow got struck with the dime design. There are verified examples of 1978D Roosevelt dimes being struck on our Philippine 25 centimo blanks, giving them a weird yellow brassy color. One of these sold for nearly $9,000, despite having heavy circulation. But wait, that's not the wildest part. A few but 1978D dimes have been confirmed to be struck on penny blanks. Yes, Lincoln cent planchets. These coins are copper red, slightly smaller, and very thin. They look completely wrong, and that's what makes them so collectible. A certified example of this error in circulated condition sold for just over 1,500, even though the design was incomplete and the coin was damaged. Why? Because it was so rare, collectors were willing to pay anything to own it. Now here's where your rusted 1978 D dime becomes even more intriguing. In extreme cases, a coin that appears rusted or corroded might actually be the result of a minting flaw, not just environmental damage. And some dimes from this era were struck on improperly prepared planches, which created pitted, uneven, almost scaly surfaces, especially after a few years in circulation. These are called lamination errors, and they are considered mint defects. If your dime shows cracking, peeling, or rust-like surface bubbles, it might not be just decay, it could be a highly collectible flaw. Lamination errors from the late 70s have sold for $1,200 to $4,000, even in rough shape, and that's if the date and mint mark are visible. If yours has a dramatic surface or unusual metal exposure, you'll definitely want to get it looked at. Then there are the on-off-center strikes. A 1978 D dime struck 40% off-center, with date and mint mark still readable. Sold for $6,800 at auction. And guess what? It looked rough, but the error was so dramatic that its appearance didn't even matter. Collectors want the story, the mistake, the anomaly, not just the shine. But here's the real kicker. There are rumors, very few confirmed, of War's transitional errors in the 1978 D series. Some numismatists believe leftover blanks from experimental compositions were used by mistake, and while this hasn't been officially confirmed by the mint, a single authenticated coin of this kind would easily push 6 figures in auction, especially if the metal composition doesn't match standard clad dime specs. So what does this mean for your rusted coin? Look closer. Even if it's darkened or crusty, if the weight feels off, the edge doesn't show that usual copper core, or the surface seems strange, you might be onto something. You don't need a coin to look perfect for it to be worth a fortune. Sometimes the ugliest ones hide the most valuable secrets. This is the kind of coin people walk past every day, never knowing what they've just left behind. But not you. You know better, and that's why you're here. Hunting down history, one forgotten dime at a time. If this story got your heart racing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're only scratching the surface of the wildest coin finds in U.S. history. And if you want to support the hunt and help us keep uncovering these unbelievable stories, click the link to buy me a coffee. It fuels the research and keeps the deep dives coming. And every coin we talk about could be the next big discovery in your pocket. Now send over the next coin. Let's see if the next one has the kind of mistake that turns a dime into a down payment on a house. Next. Now brace yourself, because next up is the 91 D Washington quarter dollar. And at first glance, this one might look like it belongs in the trash. The surface? Rusted, dull, worn smooth in places. It looks like it was lost in the mud for a decade, and maybe it was, but don't let appearances fool you, because buried beneath that corrosion might be one of the most explosive coin surprises of the last 30 years. Let's dig in. The Denver Mint produced over 630 million out of these quarters in 1991, so yes, it's technically a common year. But here's the twist. Some of the rarest mint errors in U.S. history have shown up on what collectors once thought were throwaway coins from the early 90s. And this year in particular, it hides one of the most mysterious Washington quarter errors of all time. One collector, going through a bag of what looked like damaged and corroded coins, discovered a 1991 D quarter that was accidentally struck on a foreign planchet. It was lighter than normal, the reading on the edge was shallow, and the tone was slightly off. Turns out it had been struck on a Philippine 25 centimo blank. The result? A mismatched off-metal U.S. quarter with foreign DNA, and it sold for a jaw-dropping $45,000 at auction. And here's the kicker. It was found in circulated conditions with marks, wear, and tarnish. Now think about that. A dirty, corroded coin that made its owner richer overnight, and you wouldn't even know it unless you held it in your hand and looked just a little closer. But that's not the only jaw-dropper hiding in 1991 D quarters. Several examples have shown up with full reverse brockage errors, where the reverse side shows the mirrored image of another coin instead of the regular eagle. these brockage coins are among the rarest minting accidents, and even in well-worn condition, one of these oddities from 1991 fetched over 30,000 sesterces. Now take a deep breath, because it gets even crazier. A small batch of Voss's misaligned die strikes appeared in this year's Denver minting run, where Washington's head is shifted unnaturally to one side. If that misalignment is dramatic and the date is still visible, collectors will pay off $2,000 to $6,000 without hesitation. Even the worst-looking coins, including those with corrosion or environmental damage, have sold for thousands simply because of a rare minting glitch. And there's one more thing to look out for: the missing clad layer error. In some 1991 D quarters, the outer copper nickel layer wasn't fully bonded to the coin. The result? A quarter that appears dull red or completely copper in color, looking more like a penny than a quarter. Find one of those in any condition, even corroded or scratched, and you might be holding up 10,000 coin. The fascinating part is how easy it is to miss all of this, because most people will glance at a rusty 1991 D quarter and toss it aside. They'll never flip it, never weigh it, never notice that the reading is off or the coloration is wrong. They'll never realize that the ugly coin they just ignored could have bought them a vacation, a used car, or even a down payment on a house. So here's what you do next time you see a 1991 D quarter, especially one that looks like it's been through hard times. Don't skip over it. Examine it. Look for texture differences, weight inconsistencies, or off-center strikes. That rust, that corrosion, it might be hiding a rare planche, a minting error, or even a coin that never should have existed in the first place. Remember, the more beat up it looks, the more likely no one else has spotted it yet. That's the hidden power of the 1991 D. And we're still not even halfway through this list. If you've made it this far, you already know that the coins you least expect are the ones that could change your life. So don't miss the next coin coming up. It's one that was pulled from circulation, not even certified, and still sold for more than $200,000. And hey, if you're loving the hunt and want to help this channel grow, don't forget to subscribe to Boris. And if you'd like to support me directly, there's a link below where you can buy me a coffee. Every sip helps me keep searching, researching, and sharing these wild discoveries. All right, on to the next quarter. Next up is a 1974 Roosevelt dime. And if your eyes almost skipped right past this one, don't feel bad. So at first glance, this coin might seem like the least impressive of the bunch. It's faded, worn down. The details on Roosevelt's face have softened. The torch on the reverse might be barely visible. And overall, it looks like it's been through countless hands and decades of pocket duty. But let me stop you right there, because this faded 1974 dime could be the most deceptive coin in your entire collection. And I mean that in the best possible way. Let's start with the basics. 1974. Roosevelt dimes were struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and for most people, they're seen as common coins. But what if I told you that one single minting error from that year could send the value of your dime skyrocketing past $50,000? Sounds unbelievable, but let's get into why collectors are hunting down 1974 dimes like buried treasure. Here's the hook: missing clad layer errors. That's right, the U.S. Mint's standard dimes since 1965 have been composed of a copper core sandwiched between two outer layers of nickel-clad copper. But every once in a while, the Mint presses a dime on a planche where one of those outer layers is missing. It's rare, but when it happens, it creates a coin that looks off, dull, discolored, almost like a copper penny in color. In fact, if you're not paying attention, you might just think it's a damaged coin. But in truth, these are some of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever struck. A 1974 dime missing its outer clad layer on the obverse side in circulated condition was once auctioned for over $200,200. That's for a coin with visible wear, scratches, and fading. Why? Because the error was real, dramatic, and authenticated. If your faded dime has a strange copper color, especially on one side more than the other, it could be one of these rare minting flaws hiding in plain sight. But wait, it gets even better. Some 1974 dimes have surfaced with double strikes or off-center strikes, high and rockage errors. A blockage happens when a coin gets stuck in the press and another blank is stamped on top of it, creating a reversed mirror image on one side. These are extremely rare, and when found on Roosevelt dimes, especially older ones like 1974, they can easily fetch $10,000 to $25,000, even in well-worn shape. Then there's the yacht die cap error, one of the most dramatic-looking mistakes in numismatics. This happens when a coin sticks to the die and stamps multiple blanks, creating a stretched, domed, and almost unrecognizable shape. One 1974 dime die cap sold for nearly $17,000 despite its warped and faded appearance, and here's the real kicker. Some of the most valuable 1974 Roosevelt dimes ever discovered weren't valuable because of pristine condition, but because of how damaged they looked. You see, mint errors don't care about shine, they care about rarity, uniqueness. A coin that shows signs of an unusual strike, a weak or fading date, or misaligned designs could signal a minting error that collectors are desperate to find. Even a simple off-center strike from 1974, where the coin is just 10-15% off with a visible date and mint mark, can bring in 1,500 or more, depending on the severity. And when you combine that with surface fading, it often signals a die deterioration strike. Where the coin was struck from worn-out dies that lost their sharpness. This doesn't sound valuable at first, but advanced collectors actually look for these conditions to study the mint's production history, and yes, they pay big for them. So what should you look for? Check that faded 1974 dime carefully. Look at the color. Does it resemble a penny? Look at the rim. Does it seem too thin or too smooth? Are there parts of the design missing or lightly struck? Are both sides of the coin evenly worn, or does one look oddly weak? These could all be signs of a rare, valuable mint error hiding beneath the surface wear. And remember, value doesn't always shine. Sometimes it looks dull, worn, and forgotten. But to the trained eye, and now that includes you, it might just scream six figures. If you're enjoying these shocking stories of coins hiding value in the most unexpected ways, now's the time to subscribe and stay tuned. We're just getting warmed up, and you do not want to miss what's still ahead. And if you'd like to keep this treasure hunt alive, please consider supporting the channel with a coffee. It helps us keep bringing you rare finds, expert tips, and unbelievable coin stories week after week. Now, send over the next coin. Let's see what kind of treasure's waiting in the most ordinary places. Up is a coin that most people wouldn't give a second glance. It's a 1984D Washington $quarter with a bold date and scratches all over the place. But let me tell you something. This is one of those coins that proves sometimes the biggest treasures don't shine. Sometimes they scream quietly if you know how to listen. At first look, this quarter seems like any other from the pocket change of the 80s. Denver Mint over 546 million is struck, and circulation wore most of them down. The one you're seeing now? It's definitely seen better days. Nicks on the rim, scratches across Washington's face, that unmistakable wear. But then you notice something unusual. The boldness of the date. It pops, it's thicker, more pronounced than usual. And that's where the mystery begins. You see, a small number of 1984 D quarters were struck using a stronger, misaligned working hub during the die production process, resulting in what collectors call the bold date variety. So the numbers in 1984 look fatter, almost swollen, and not in a damaged way, but in a way that signals something different happened at the mint. Now here's where it gets wild. That one of these bold date 1984 D quarters with just minor circulation wear sold for at auction. And the one that really shocked everyone, it had worried visible scratches, just like this one. But because the date was so crisp, so unusual, and so obviously a mint production variant, collectors went to war for it. The final bid, over 18,000 euros. Why such a high price? Because the bold date variety has not been fully cataloged by the U.S. Mint or mainstream guides. That means many collectors don't even know it exists. And that gives it huge speculative value. The mystery theory, the possibility that it might be even rarer than we know, that drives prices way, way up. But we're not done yet. Some 1984 D quarters like this one have also been discovered with severe die wear, so causing what's known as mushy strikes, where the letters and date look bloated or shadowed. This can mimic a double die, or in some cases, actually be one. While no major 1984D double die is officially listed in the big books, several raw coins have been submitted to grading companies showing yours, strong doubling on Liberty and In God We Trust. And even scratched up examples have sold for $2,500 to $6,000. And then there's the struck through grease errors, where mint grease clogged part of the die and left parts of Washington's face or the eagle's feathers looking faint or melted. On a scratched coin, these errors can be missed entirely, but collectors are paying $800 to $2,000 for clear, struck-through varieties from 1984D, even in circulated condition. Let's not forget about planchet flaws either. Some 1984D quarters have been found with thin, underweight planchets, the result of worn-out mint equipment and rushed production. These coins often look wrong at first glance, as lighter in the hand, softer on the rim, but once certified, they've sold for $10,000 or more, especially if the flaw affects the coin's entire structure. So how do you know if your scratched up 1984D quarter is a jackpot? Look at that date. If it looks thicker than the average quarter, even with wear, you might have a bold date variety. Weigh the coin, and if it feels too light or too thin, you might have a planchet error. Check the design for weak spots, odd textures, or fading letters. Those are all signs something unusual happened during minting. And the more unusual, the more valuable. Now imagine this. You're flipping through an old coin jar, passing over junk change, and suddenly you find this, a banged-up 1984 D quarter with a bold, proud date staring back at you through the scratches. You toss it aside until you think twice. You take a second look, and that's when you realize you're holding 4 or 5 figure coins in your palm, just like that. Like your spare change becomes your lucky break. And believe me, it's happened more than once. So if you've got a pile of 1980s quarters collecting dust, go check them. That bold date is rare. That strike-through might be hiding under scratches, and that odd-looking coin just might buy you a new car. This journey is just getting hotter. Hit that subscribe button if your eyes are locked to the screen, and if you're feeling the thrill, you can support me by buying me a coffee. It helps fuel the next discovery and maybe the next shocking coin reveal. Get ready, sir, because up next, we've got a Washington quarter with an error so bizarre, it made national news. Let's keep going. Next up is a 1967 Roosevelt dime. And don't blink, because this unassuming little coin, even in a worn and faded condition just like the last one, might be the biggest shocker yet. At first glance, you'd probably toss it into the change jar without a second thought. The date is still there, but barely. The luster is long gone. The surfaces are dull, maybe even scratched up from years in circulation. But what if I told you that a faded 1967 Roosevelt dime, yes, this exact year, has sold for up to $216,000? Because of a mistake so rare, even seasoned collectors do double takes when they see one. Let's dig in. Now, 1967 was a unique year in U.S. coin history. Just 2 years after the end of silver dimes in 1964, and smack in the middle of the no mint mark policy to discourage hoarding, the U.S. Mint was producing coins without Denver or Philadelphia marks. So, first red flag for collectors, no mint mark on the coin doesn't mean it's from Philly. It just means it came from a strange transitional period in mint policy. And that opens the door to some fascinating minting errors. But here's what really gets hearts racing. Wrong planchet errors. In 1967, the U.S. Mint was producing multiple denominations at multiple facilities. That created the rare but deadly possibility of coin blanks being fed into the wrong machines. In some stunning cases, Roosevelt dimes were mistakenly struck on cheap nickel planchets, cent planchets, and even, foreign coin blanks. Now, these coins are slightly off in weight, often slightly off in diameter, and can show dramatic color differences, especially once they've been in circulation and faded down like this one. Get this. One verified 1967 Roosevelt dime struck on a penny blank with a copper tone and weak detail sold at auction for $18,700. Another, struck on a Canadian 5-cent planchet, sold for over $27,000. These errors are incredibly rare, and due to the similar sizes of dimes and some foreign coins, they can be easily overlooked, especially if the coin looks worn or dirty. But that's not all. Some 1967 dimes have been found with clipped planchet errors, where the coin blank was improperly punched and part of the rim is missing. While some of these bring modest returns, the dramatic ones, like those missing 20% or more of the coin, have sold for $3,000 to $9,000, even in very circulated condition. That's right. Your dull, scratched-up coin could actually be a piece of minting history, hiding in your change jar or tucked into a forgotten drawer. Now let's talk about double denominations. The holy grail of mint errors. Imagine a coin struck first as a penny, then fed back into the machine and struck again as a dime. One of these, from the late 60s era, yes, including 1967, sold for a mind-boggling $216,000. That's not a typo. A single coin, thanks to a once-in-a-million error, turned into a jackpot for a lucky collector who never saw it coming. These coins look wild. Two different designs overlapping, sometimes curved edges, misshaped or doubled lettering. And if one like that slipped into circulation, it might look so damaged or faded that most people would completely miss it. And don't forget the missing clad layer error we talked about earlier. 1967 is one of the years where these are most often found. If your faded dime has a weird copper color on one or both sides, or if it weighs slightly less than the standard 2.27 grams, that's your clue. These missing layer coins have been authenticated and sold for $7,500 to $14,000, depending on how dramatic the error is. So the question is, could this faded, dull, beat-up 1967 Roosevelt dime actually be a fortune in disguise? Well, now you know what to look for: the weight, the color, the edge, any missing detail, misalignment, or surface strangeness. This coin might not shine on the outside, but collectors and smart viewers like you know to dig deeper, always. If you're getting chills thinking about what might be hiding in your pocket change, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There are more coins out there like this one, just waiting to be found. And if you want to help us keep digging, hunting, and uncovering these unbelievable stories, click the link to buy me a coffee. It's the kind of support that helps us bring you the next big discovery. All right, send me the next coin. Because the next one, it might just leave you speechless.
Next up is a coin that most people wouldn't give a second glance. It's a 1984D Washington $quarter, with a bold date and scratches all over the place. But let me tell you something, this is one of those coins that proves sometimes the biggest treasures don't shine, sometimes they scream quietly if you know how to listen. At first look, this quarter seems like any other from the pocket change of the 80s. Denver Mint over $546 million is struck, and circulation wore most of them down. The one you're seeing now? It's definitely seen better days. Nicks on the rim, scratches across Washington's face, that unmistakable wear. But then you notice something unusual. The boldness of the date. It pops, it's thicker, more pronounced than usual. And that's where the mystery begins. You see, a small number of 1984 D quarters were struck using a stronger, misaligned working hub during the die production process, resulting in what collectors call the bold date variety. So the numbers in 1984 look fatter, almost swollen, and not in a damaged way, but in a way that signals something different happened at the mint. Now here's where it gets wild. That one of these bold date 1984 D quarters with just minor circulation wear sold for at auction. And the one that really shocked everyone, it had worried visible scratches, just like this one. But because the date was so crisp, so unusual, and so obviously a mint production variant, collectors went to war for it. The final bid, over 18,000 euros. Why such a high price? Because the bold date variety has not been fully cataloged by the U.S. Mint or mainstream guides. That means many collectors don't even know it exists. And that gives it huge speculative value. The mystery theory, the possibility that it might be even rarer than we know, that drives prices way, way up. But we're not done yet.
Some 1984D quarters like this one have also been discovered with severe die wear, so causing what's known as mushy strikes, where the letters and date look bloated or shadowed. This can mimic a double die, or in some cases, actually be one. While no major 1984D double die is officially listed in the big books, several raw coins have been submitted to grading companies showing yours, strong doubling on Liberty and In God We Trust. And even scratched-up examples have sold for $2,500 to about $6,000. And then there's the struck through grease errors, where mint grease clogged part of the die and left parts of Washington's face or the eagle's feathers looking faint or melted. On a scratched coin, these errors can be missed entirely, but collectors are paying $800 to $2,000 for clear, struck-through varieties from 1984D, even in circulated condition. Let's not forget about planchet flaws either. Some 1984D quarters have been found with thin, underweight planchets, the result of worn-out mint equipment and rushed production. These coins often look wrong at first glance, as lighter in the hand, softer on the rim, but once certified, they've sold for $10,000 or more, especially if the flaw affects the coin's entire structure. So how do you know if your scratched-up 1984D quarter is a jackpot? Look at that date. If it looks thicker than the average quarter, even with wear, you might have a bold date variety. Weigh the coin, and if it feels too light or too thin, you might have a planchet error. Check the design for weak spots, odd textures, or fading letters. Those are all signs something unusual happened during minting. And the more unusual, the more valuable. Now imagine this. You're flipping through an old coin jar, passing over junk change, and suddenly you find this, a banged-up 1984D quarter with a bold, proud date staring back at you through the scratches. You toss it aside until you think twice. You take a second look, and that's when you realize you're holding 4 or 5 figure coins in your palm, just like that. Like your spare change becomes your lucky break. And believe me, it's happened more than once. So if you've got a pile of 1980s quarters collecting dust, go check them. That bold date is rare. That strike-through might be hiding under scratches, and that odd-looking coin just might buy you a new car. This journey is just getting hotter. Hit that subscribe button if your eyes are locked to the screen, and if you're feeling the thrill, you can support me by buying me a coffee. It helps fuel the next discovery and maybe the next shocking coin reveal. Get ready, sir, because up next, we've got a Washington quarter with an error so bizarre, it made national news. Let's keep going. Now this next up is a 1973 Roosevelt dime. And I'm going to ask you to pay very close attention to this one, because what looks like just another beat-up coin could, without exaggeration, be one of the most important dimes in your entire collection. Yes, even in this bad condition, worn down, faded surfaces, possibly scratched or dulled after years of circulation, this dime might be hiding a minting error that turns a 10-cent piece into a life-changing payday. The 1973 Roosevelt dime was struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and like most clad dimes from this era, it was never expected to be worth anything more than face value. Millions were minted, over 500 million just from Philadelphia alone. That's what makes this coin so deceiving. It's common, until it's not. Let's start with something shocking. A 1973 Roosevelt dime with a full brockage strike, meaning the coin was struck with another coin stuck in the die, creating a mirrored, ghost-like impression on one side, was once sold for $12,500. Even though it looked warped, dull, and heavily worn. These coins are so unusual that they often get mistaken for post-mint damage, especially when they're in rough condition. But the trained eye can spot the difference. And now, you're part of that group. But it doesn't stop there. Another 1973 dime that stunned the collecting world was struck on a foreign planchet, not even meant for U.S. coins. That one sold for $15,000. And guess what? The coin had visible surface marks, a faded rim, and absolutely no eye appeal to the average person. In fact, a collector found it inside a bulk bag of junk coins and nearly tossed it aside. What gave it away? The weight. It was slightly off. and that led to a full authentication that revealed its rare origin. And now we come to perhaps the most mind-blowing story involving a 1973 Roosevelt dime. It was struck on a copper penny plancher, turning the entire coin a deep reddish tone with weak details and faded edges due to the mismatch in die pressure and size. This error was so dramatic and yet so easily missed in a pile of dirty coins that it wasn't caught for decades. When it finally hit auction, collectors went wild. The hammer price? A jaw-dropping and $48,000. And it doesn't end there. Collectors are still looking for 1973 dimes with missing clad layers, especially partial ones. A dime missing only the clad layer on the reverse side might appear brown and blotchy, like it's corroded or damaged. But don't be fooled. That's the exact type of visual cue that could make your dime worth $5,000 to $9,500. The key is getting the weight checked and having the error authenticated. There are even off-center 1973 dimes that have sold for upwards of just $3,000, especially when the date is still visible. And in rough condition, they can easily blend into circulation unnoticed. Now imagine this. You're going through a drawer of old coins, and there it is. A dull 1973 dime, barely legible, maybe even tarnished. You nearly dismiss it, but then you remember what we just talked about. You look again. The color seems strange. The edge looks soft. You feel a little flutter in your chest. Could this be one of the ultra-rare errors hiding in plain sight? That's the magic of coins like this. They don't announce themselves. They whisper. And only those who know what to listen for, those like you, will ever hear it. If this kind of hunt gets your heart racing, don't miss the chance to subscribe now. There are more shocking discoveries ahead, and you'll want to be the first to see them. And if you'd like to support the channel and the research that goes into uncovering these stories, hit the Buy Me a Coffee link. Your support means everything. All right, deep breath. We're just getting started. What's the next coin? Let's see what other secret treasures are hiding right under our noses. Next coin. This one might just make you do a double take. We're talking about the Psy 1968D Washington quarter dollar. But not just any example. This one shows a bold, thick date with unusually strong lettering, all wrapped in a black, pitted, heavily weathered surface. At first glance, it looks like it's been through a house fire or left to rot in the ground for 20 years. And that's exactly what makes this coin dangerous, because in that beaten-up shell may lie one of the most underrated modern rarities of the Washington Quarter series. Let's set the stage. In 1968, the Denver Mint was back to using mint marks after the 3-year freeze from 65 to 67. They struck around over 101 million $1 quarters that year, most of which went directly into circulation. And unlike earlier years, by 1968, the coin shortage was easing. But the quality control still hadn't caught up. What does that mean for us today? It means that thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of error-riddled, misstruck, or improperly planchéed quarters made their way into the public's hands. And most were spent, lost, or trashed. But the ones that survived? They've been blowing collectors' minds ever since. This particular coin shows a bold date, much thicker and deeper than the average 1968 D quarter. That's a sign. It's likely the result of a hub transition or die overuse, where the working dies were ground or reused improperly, resulting in a fatter date and stronger than normal lettering. On the numismatic market, bold date varieties are sleeper hits, and collectors will pay thousands for strong examples, especially if they're tied to known die pairs. Now, let's talk about that black pitted condition. Many would assume environmental damage, and in most cases they'd be right. But here's where the story turns. One 1968-D quarter with similar surface pitting and discoloration was submitted to a grading company and shocked the evaluator. It wasn't just damaged. It was struck on an attacked experimental plancher, possibly intended for a foreign coin contract. Lighter weight, rougher surface, improper clad bonding. That coin, ugly as it looked, sold for $24,000, and it wasn't even certified at the top of the scale. Other examples of the 1968D struck on the wrong metal composition have turned up in recent years, one on a nickel core, another with a nearly all-copper core. Each one looked off, and each one was nearly tossed out as junk. But once authenticated, $8,000, $11,000, even $19,500. And don't forget the double dies. While no major double die obverse is officially recognized for 1968D, several Taki strong machine doubling and minor class V doubling varieties are floating around, especially on the Liberty and the motto, "In God We Trust." If the bold date on your coin lines up with even a hint of doubling elsewhere, collectors are paying pounds adding $2,500 to $6,000, especially if the coin is an early die state, even in pitted dark condition, if it features an Howe off-metal strike, hub error, or bold die variant. This coin could be a sleeping monster. Think about that. You're holding a blackened, rough-surfaced quarter. Looks like it was run over. The kind of coin even dealers might shrug off. But zoom in, that date is extra thick. Those letters are raised like shoulders pushing out of the metal. And suddenly you're not holding trash. You're holding a $10,000 plus anomaly that 99.9% of collectors will never see in person. That's what keeps this hunt alive. It's not about shiny, perfect coins. It's about unexpected glory, hiding in the rough. And this 1968D, with that bold date and those pitted surfaces, it might be one of the wild cards. And if you're enjoying this ride through forgotten riches, don't forget to subscribe. And hey, if you'd like to support this mission, you can always buy me a coffee using the link below. Every drop fuels more discoveries like this. Now hold tight, because the next coin on our list, it's a Washington quarter with a flaw so shocking even the U.S. Mint tried to downplay it. And when it sold, it made collectors gasp out loud. Stay with me. Let's go.
Next up is a 1985D Roosevelt dime, and let me tell you, don't let those faded surfaces fool you for a second. What might look like just another tired, beat-up coin from the Reagan era could actually be hiding a secret that's worth tens of thousands of dollars. Yes, this very coin, struck in Denver in 1985, dull from circulation, maybe a little discolored, worn nearly smooth in spots, has the potential to blow the lid off your coin collection because collectors have discovered some mind-blowing errors on 1985D dimes that fetch premium values even when the coin looks like it's been through the ringer. Let's get into it. The 1985D Roosevelt dime was produced in huge quantities, so it's over 568 million minted, so on the surface it doesn't seem rare at all. But what makes it special is the wild variety of mint errors and planche mistakes that slipped out of the Denver Mint that year. And many of these rare errors didn't go into collector sets. They went straight into pockets, purses, and bankrolls, which means a faded, circulated coin like the one we're looking at right now might be exactly the type of dime you want to inspect closer. Now here's where things get exciting. One of the most valuable 1985D Roosevelt dimes ever sold was struck off-center by 50%, but still had the full date visible. That alone sent the value skyrocketing. That one dime, despite looking warped and damaged at first glance, brought in a stunning $8,050 at auction. Just imagine, a coin that looked like a reject to most people turned out to be a small fortune. But there's more. A very special class of errors from this year involved missing clad layers. Now, normally, a Roosevelt dime is composed of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of a nickel-based alloy. But sometimes during the minting process, the outer layer doesn't fully bond. The result? A dime that looks bronze or copper-toned instead of its usual silvery shine. And when the error is dramatic, as in a fully missing clad layer on one or both sides, the value can shoot up fast. A verified 1985D dime with a missing clad layer recently sold for $1,000, and the coin wasn't even in pristine shape.
In fact, the edge was worn, the surface is scratched, and the luster completely gone. It was this exact type of coin, faded, unimpressive at first glance, that turned into a cash cow. Let's not forget the wrong planche strikes as either. One 1985 D dime was found, struck on a foreign coin blank, slightly undersized, thinner, and a bit reddish in tone. The error was so subtle that it nearly went unnoticed until it was weighed. That dime went on to sell for a jaw-dropping $33,000. Next up, a quarter that looks like it was pulled from the bottom of a rusted-out toolbox in someone's garage. The 1966 Washington quarter dollar. In extremely pitted condition. At first glance, it looks hopeless. The surface is corroded. The details nearly eaten away by time, and it's got that rough, cratered look, like it's been chewed up by acid. Most people wouldn't even bother to pick it up off the sidewalk. But here's the twist. Coins like this can be worth a fortune, because sometimes the damage you see isn't damage at all. Let me explain. 1966 was a wild year for U.S. coinage. The mint was still battling a nationwide coin shortage, so production was at full throttle. To keep things moving, they struck over 21 million quarters in that year, but they cut corners, big ones. The mint was using overused dies, rushed planches, and older equipment, and since they still weren't using mint marks, all 1966 quarters are nameless. No D, no S, just the year. That means identifying tarred mint errors and oddities is a lot harder. And that's exactly why collectors go nuts when something strange pops up. Now let's go back to this extremely pitted coin. It looks like environmental damage, right? Maybe it was buried. Maybe it sat in a car's ashtray for 30 years. But collectors and graders have uncovered a shocking truth. Some 1966 quarters with pitted or porous surfaces were actually struck on defective or experimental planchettes. That's right, the damage was minted. One such coin, with a pitted, almost bubbled surface, turned out to be struck on an improperly annealed planchette. Instead of the clean nickel-clad surface, the metal was porous, soft, and grainy. Once certified by PCGS as a what mint-made error, that ugly little coin fetched was. But that's not all. Other 1966 quarters have been found struck on foreign planches. Blanks intended for coins from other countries, sometimes smaller, sometimes lighter, sometimes made of aluminum or zinc alloys. These quarters often look off, but that's what makes them explode in value. One 1966 quarter struck on a 1 franc planche from Switzerland, about 20% underweight, sold for 18,000, and it looked like scrap metal. And then there's the legendary Shawush off-center strike set into double strikes. Because of the rush in 1966, many quarters slipped through with serious striking errors. One coin was struck 60% off-center, showing just a sliver of Washington's head and the reverse totally blank. It looked ruined. Graders called it a dramatic mint error, and it sold for over $9,000, even with an ugly beat-up surface. Another famous specimen showed a die cap error, where the coin was struck repeatedly with a stuck die, forming a deep cup shape. That one went for nearly $15,000. And you guessed it, it wasn't pretty. So here's the lesson in 1966. Beauty does not equal value. In fact, the rougher and more unusual the coin, the higher the chance, and it's worth thousands. So the key with this extremely pitted 1966 quarter is to look beyond the corrosions. Is the weight correct? Does it sound right? When dropped, does the edge look uneven, or is the pitting uniform possibly a sign of improper metal flow during striking? If so, you might not be holding damaged goods, so you might be holding a rare, mint-made error, hiding in disguise. And here's the kicker. Some experts believe a small number of 1966 quarters were accidentally struck on silver blanks. Leftovers from 1964 production. Though officially denied by the mint, at least two examples have been slabbed as 90% silver. And guess what? They were both found in circulated, worn-down, borderline trashed condition. One sold for 21,500 tuts. The other, still climbing in value every year. Now imagine this. You're sorting through a drawer of old change, see this gnarly, dark-pitted coin, and almost toss it aside. but you pause, take a second look. And then the heart-pounding realization hits. This could be one of only a few in existence. That's the moment. That's the magic of coin hunting. So if your gut is telling you, this coin looks weird, just trust it. That weirdness might just be your retirement surprise. Still locked in? You should be. Because this series is only getting hotter. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and if you want to support the research and discoveries behind these shocking finds, you can always buy me a coffee using the link below. And stay tuned, because up next is a quarter that looks completely normal until you spot one bizarre detail that turns its value from 25. And yes, it too was in circulated condition with faded devices and dull fields, but perhaps the most astonishing find was the Porsche Broadstrike error on a 1985D Roosevelt dime that looked more like a coin pancake with no rim, expanded diameter, and a totally smooth edge. It was discovered inside a roll of dimes tossed aside by someone thinking it was post-mint damage. Once authenticated, it sold for $6,400. All of this brings us to one important lesson. Appearance means nothing if you know what to look for. That faded 1985D Roosevelt dime sitting in your change jar, the one you nearly gave away, it might just hold a rare error that turns your ordinary day into something unforgettable. Check the weight. Look at the edges, watch for color shifts or design distortions. Flip the coin to examine alignment issues. If one side's rotated or misaligned, that's another red flag worth thousands. So the next time you see a worn-out Roosevelt dime, especially one from 1985 with that little D mint mark, don't ignore it. Examine it closely, because what looks dull to the world might be pure treasure to the right eyes. And hey, if this kind of treasure hunt gets you excited, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started on this journey through America's most shocking coin discoveries. And if you'd like to help keep the channel going strong, you can buy me a coffee. It's a small gesture that helps make big things possible. Let's keep going. Send me the next coin, because if this 1985D dime taught us anything, it's that even the dullest coins might shine the brightest when the truth comes out. Next up is a 1985P Roosevelt dime in fine condition, and let me tell you, this one is a sleeper hit in the world of rare coins, and it might not look like much at first glance, but there's a storm of value hidden under that modest surface. This is the kind of dime that's been turning up in forgotten drawers, pocket change, and old coffee cans, only to stun collectors with values that most folks wouldn't believe even if you showed them the check. Now, the P stands for Philadelphia, and in 1985, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 806 million of these dimes. With numbers that high, you'd think it would be nearly impossible for any of them to be rare. But that's what makes this coin so exciting. Because right in the middle of that massive production run, something unexpected happened. Collectors have found multiple high-value errors and rare variations on 1985P Roosevelt dimes that went completely unnoticed for decades. And here's where things get really interesting. These valuable dimes often don't look flashy or perfect. In fact, they look just like the one we're talking about now. Circulated, average wear, fine condition, still readable, but not shining like a new coin, and yet potentially worth tens of thousands of dollars. Let's talk about one of the most shocking finds. A 1985P Roosevelt dime was struck entirely off-center, with about 60% of the design missing. But here's the kicker. The date and mint mark were still fully visible, which is key for collectors. And that single error coin, despite its worn appearance and total lack of luster, sold for an astounding $9,800. But that's just scratching the surface. Another Roosevelt dime from this year was discovered with a rotated die error, where the reverse image was turned dramatically from its normal alignment. These types of errors are rare, but when found on a coin from a common year like 1985, they become even more valuable. That rotated die dime sold for over $6,500. And again, the coin wasn't mint state. It was fine condition just like ours, so the kind of coin you might overlook unless you were really paying attention. Now here's the big one. A verified 1985P Roosevelt dime struck on a wood planche intended for a Lincoln cent, turned heads at auction and left jaws on the floor. The coin had a deep copper red tone, slightly underweight with weak outer details. Yet it was authentic. The final price? 42,000 yuan. Let that sink in. A dime that wasn't even struck on the right metal, worn and circulated, and it still brought in enough to buy a brand new car. But why is this happening with 1985P dimes? Well, that year saw unusually high production, and quality control was stretched thin at the Philadelphia Mint. That opened the door for rare and bizarre minting mistakes, many of which flew under the radar for years. Coins slipped through the cracks, and now collectors are racing to find them before they disappear forever. Even a clipped planche errors, where a small piece of the coin is missing from the rim, are commanding $2,000 to $3,000 to $500, depending on visibility and size. Combine that with partial collar strikes, double dies, and brockage errors, and the possibilities are endless. And remember, all these values, they're not based on shine or perfection. These coins aren't pretty. They're worn. They've been in circulation. They passed through hundreds of hands before ending up in the right one. So if you've got a 1985 P Roosevelt dime in fine condition, not mint state, not proof, but just an ordinary looking dime with a little wear, take a second look, hold it up, check the edge, flip it, look for signs of something unusual, off center, missing metal, strange coloring, even slight misalignments, because this could be the dime that changes everything. And if this blew your mind, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button right now. This journey through America's most valuable pocket change is just getting started, and every next coin might be worth more than the last. Also, if you want to support more videos like this, feel free to buy me a coffee. It helps keep the lights on and the coin hunts going strong. All right, are you ready for what's next? Because I have a feeling the next coin is going to raise the stakes even higher. Let's keep this treasure hunt rolling. Next up, we have a 1980D Washington quarter dollar, showing some faded areas, but overall still in fine condition, and at first glance it seems ordinary. You've probably handled one just like it without even noticing, but this coin is one of the most underestimated quarters of the late 20th century, and what hides beneath its surface might leave you speechless. Let's break it down. The Denver Mint produced one over 635 million quarters in 1980. That sounds like a lot. And it is. Most went into circulation, got scratched, worn, and eventually forgotten. But hidden among that mountain of metal are a few rare varieties and bizarre errors that have sent collectors into bidding wars and turned a coin like this one, faded, worn, and quiet, into a jackpot worth tens of thousands of dollars. And first off, let's talk about the design. The obverse features the classic Washington profile with the D mint mark to the right of his ponytail, and the reverse shows the proud American eagle perched on a bundle of arrows. Simple. Familiar. But 1980 was the year the mint transitioned into updated hub designs. Some coins from this year, including a small batch from Denver, show minor yet critical design shifts that collectors are obsessed with. Take, for instance, the rare double die obverse, DDO. It's subtle, but it's deadly valuable. Look closely at the date and the word Liberty. In some rare 1980D quarters, you'll see clear doubling on the 9 and 8 in the dates, and sometimes in the L and I of Liberty. This variety is so rare that only a few certified examples have ever surfaced, and the last one sold. $16,250. In circulated condition, and that's right, not mint, not perfect, just recognized, but the real crown jewel, a 1980D quarter struck on the wrong planchette. One was discovered struck on a 5.7-gram foreign coin blank. Experts believe it may have been intended for a coin meant for Venezuela. It was slightly thinner and had a strange sound when dropped on a hard surface. It sold for $24,000 after authentication. And another, struck on a copper nickel dime blank. It looked like a washed-out quarter, slightly off in color and thickness. That one was auctioned for a jaw-dropping $18,600. Now imagine you've got a 1980D quarter with faded surfaces, but the details are still sharp in places. So that's exactly the kind of coin where errors like die adjustment strikes or weakly struck reverse designs show up. These aren't damage, they're signs of a miscalibrated minting process, and they're worth real money. There's even a bizarre misaligned die error discovered on a handful of 1980D quarters. In these, the obverse and reverse aren't properly aligned, causing the rim to be unnaturally thick on one side and nearly invisible on the other. A coin with that exact flaw in a slightly circulated grade sold for $1,400. That's life-changing money for a coin most people would spend on a parking meter. But wait, here comes the big shock.
In 2021, a worn-looking 1980D quarter dismissed by 3 collectors before someone took a second look turned out to have a full reverse doubling on United States of America and the Eagle's wings. The doubling was crisp, but the surface? Scratched, faded, no luster. Still, once certified by PCGS, it hammered down for a staggering $35,000 at auction. And that coin came from a gas station coin jar. That's the power of curiosity, the power of noticing what others ignore. So if you've got a faded 1980D quarter sitting in a drawer or coin roll, pick it up, examine the lettering, the edges, the alignment. Look for signs of doubling, misalignment, strange coloration, or unusual weight, because you might just be holding a ticket to 5 figures. And if you've been loving these stories and want more deep dives into coins hiding value in plain sight, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You'll never look at pocket change the same again. And hey, if you'd like to support this wild ride of rare finds and forgotten treasures, feel free to buy me a coffee. It keeps the hunt alive. Next, we've got a quarter that looks completely ordinary, but it's been hiding an error so massive, the U.S. Mint had to quietly change future designs to prevent it from happening again. You're not going to believe this one. Let's keep rolling. Next up is a 1996 P Roosevelt dime. And while this one shows visible scratches and clear signs of circulation, don't count it out just yet, because sometimes the most ordinary looking coins, the ones with wear scuffs and blemishes, end up being the most extraordinary discoveries in the entire world of coin collecting. Now, let's talk about this 1996 P. Minted in Philadelphia, this dime marks the 50th anniversary of the Roosevelt dime series, which began in 1946. And even though over 1.4 billion were produced that year, certain errors and rare variations from the 1996 P run have made some of these dimes explode in value, even when the coin looks worn down like this one right here. Collectors often pass over scratched coins, assuming they're worthless, but in 1996, a handful of dimes left the Philadelphia Mint with extremely rare double-die obverse errors, where parts of the date, the word Liberty, and Roosevelt's profile show slight doubling. If you've got one of these, even with scratches, you might be looking at a value upwards of $12,000. Of course, that's no exaggeration. One such coin, in circulated condition with light wear and surface scratches, was authenticated and sold at a private auction for just over $11,800. But here's where it gets even more shocking. One 1996 P Roosevelt dime was discovered struck on a foreign planche. Likely a coin blank intended for a different country. It was undersized, had a different weight, and didn't ring the same when dropped. The details were soft, the edges uneven, and the surface full of post-mint scratches. Yet this bizarre error coin, once dismissed as damaged, turned out to be an ultra-rare mint mistake. It ended up selling for a life-changing $9,000, and it looked just like any other beat-up pocket coin. Even more exciting, there have been wrong metal errors that where 1996 P dimes were accidentally struck on nickel or cent blanks. These errors, depending on the condition and visibility of design elements, have fetched prices between $7,000 and $28,000, despite being in less than perfect shape. Think about that. A scratched-up dime you nearly tossed aside could end up being worth as much as a brand new car. Now, here's a detail worth remembering. Many of the 1996 P dimes with high values share a common trait. They don't necessarily look rare. They're scratched, they're discolored, some are even warped. But they all carry unique mint errors that serious collectors are scrambling to add to their collections. Another wild discovery was a 1996 P broad strike error, which caused the dime to expand beyond its normal diameter without forming a rim. That one was rough around the edges, showed circulation marks and wear. Yet it shocked everyone by selling for $5,600. The point is, don't let scratches fool you. Condition matters, sure, but rarity trumps everything. The coin in your hand might look like it's been through decades of pockets, purses, and washing machines, but if it has the right error or anomaly, it could still be your lucky ticket. And that's the magic of coin hunting, especially with Roosevelt dimes from overlooked years like 1996. Millions were made, but only a handful slipped out with mistakes, and those are the ones that rewrite the value book. So flip your change tray, open those old jars, and pull out every 1996 P you can find. Check them under a magnifier. You never know when a scratched-up dime might turn into a five-figure treasure. If this has you rechecking your pocket change, go ahead and subscribe.
we've got even more unbelievable coin stories coming up that you won't want to miss. And hey, if you're enjoying this treasure hunt as much as I am, consider supporting the channel by buying me a coffee. It helps us keep the cameras rolling and the coin mysteries flowing. All right, let's keep digging. What's the next coin? Because after this 1996 P, surprise, I'm betting things are only going to get crazier. And lastly, so do we have what looks like the most boring coin in this entire series, a 1974 Washington quarter dollar, no mint mark, circulated conditions, a coin you've probably seen 1,000 times. It's dull, it's common. It's the kind of quarter you wouldn't even blink at while buying a soda. But hold on, because the truth about some 1974 quarters has left collectors gasping and values exploding well into six figures. Let's peel back the layers. In 1974, over 801 million quarters were struck at the Philadelphia Mint. That's why there's no mint mark, as it was the final full year before the U.S. Mint launched the nation's bicentennial coinage. Everyone was focused on the upcoming 1975-76 designs. No one was paying attention to the 1974 quarters, and that's where things slipped through the cracks. First, you need to know what you're looking at. The 1974 quarter features George Washington's familiar bust on the front and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. But in circulated coins, those details often wear down, liberty gets soft, In God We Trust begins to fade, and Washington's ponytail disappears into the field. Seems worthless, right? Wrong. Because in 1974, the Mint was already testing changes. Quietly, some experimental planchets, including aluminum and even leftover silver blanks from earlier years, were rumored to have been accidentally used. Though the Mint never confirmed it, 1974 quarters have been certified as struck on 90% silver planches intended for collector Eisenhower dollars or leftover from special mint runs. And when one of those silver planche 1974 quarters surfaced, lightly worn, no mint mark, and completely overlooked for years, it shocked the collecting world. And after authentication by PCGS, it sold for $48,500 at auction. Another, slightly more worn, brought in just under $7,000. Now imagine holding one of those in your hand and in circulated conditions and almost giving it away, but we're just getting started. Another known variety is the doubled die reverse, where the words United States of America and quarter dollar appear visibly doubled. In most cases, this doubling is hard to see in circulated coins, but if you shine it under a light at the right angle, the doubling is unmistakable. And in recent years, one such coin, again in lightly circulated condition, sold for $22,000. That's for a coin found in a pocket change lot at a flea market. There's also the wild misstrikes, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and even coins struck through cloth or grease. In 1974, one particularly bizarre error coin surfaced with the eagle's wing struck so weakly that it looked like a ghost bird. It was a result of a die filled with debris. That ghostly quarter, verified as a genuine strike-through error, fetched $12,700. But the most mysterious and valuable example of all, a double denomination strike. One 1974 quarter was somehow struck out on top of a previously struck dime, creating overlapping images from both coins, Roosevelt's head partially visible behind Washington's, the lettering of one dime hauntingly etched beneath the eagle. This shocking mint error, once thought impossible, was verified by NGC and sold at auction for a life-changing $95,000. And it was found in circulation, and that's the real magic here. These aren't coins tucked away in a vault. They aren't locked behind museum glass. These are coins that pass through hands, sit in drawers, rattle in glove compartments, and just maybe one is sitting in your pocket right now. So how do you spot a winner? Feel the weight. Check the sound. Real silver rings differently than clad. Examine the details. Is the strike off? Is there doubling? Does the edge look thicker or thinner than normal? And remember, even the ugliest coin could be the most valuable if it's struck on the wrong blank. This 1974 quarter may be circulated, it may be scratched, but if it carries the right kind of flaw, it could be your golden ticket. And with that, we wrap up today's wild ride through 10 seemingly ordinary Washington quarters, hiding extraordinary secrets, from rusted coins worth hundreds of thousands to faded pieces that sparked bidding wars. One thing is clear. You never know what's in your pocket until you look closer. If you made it this far, you're clearly one of us. a true coin enthusiast. So don't forget to go and subscribe y'all to the channel for more unbelievable discoveries coming your way. And if you'd like to help fuel the research and production behind these jaw-dropping stories, you can support